Episode 6 of the Podcasting for Business Comedy Hour. We have special guest Anna Vocino joining us today. Gee, we've been having some laughs backstage, virtually, so we're going to have a really, really great time with this one. If this is your first time joining us, make sure you like and comment. Let us know a little bit about your business journey. And if you would like to be featured in terms of an experience that you've had with growing your business or a trouble that you've had growing your business or anything to do with your podcasting journey, send Ron's a DM or send me a DM and we'll make sure that we bring you in for the next episode. Also, we want to make sure you have as much fun and we get this in front of as many people as possible. So to help us beat the algorithm, please comment, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if there's something that lands for you, we'd love to hear what that is. All we talk about in this show is podcasting for business, how you can use your podcast to grow your business so you can get more listeners, get more clients, and turn your podcast into a leverageable asset. Ronsley, speaking of assets, how are you doing, Ronsley?
Hey, I never get this kind of appreciation at home, so thank you.
That's a liability. Yeah.
Well, that's why we do these lives, Thank you for appreciating me. But we have Anna Vocino in the house, which I think is way more of an entertainment than anything that we could sort of bring to the party, because Anna... Look at the actor in Anna that's looking at herself, and
I'm trying to make my head the same size as you guys. So
no, my head's bigger. Sorry, Anna. That's
Hey, guys.
And we normally do our regular Clubhouse, which is audio only. This is like I feel like it's it's like a nightclub at the end of the night when the lights come on. We're all like, "Whoa, is that what we look like?"
Oh. We're a handsome bunch.
Aren't we just? Well, we're glad to have Anna Vocino in the house. Not only has she's been in podcasts for like way longer than I have, double the time. Voiceover talent, actor, stand-up comedian. I think that's a pretty cool. You've done some pretty cool shit in your lifetime. Hey, Anna.
I've been around the block. As they say.
Anna from the block.
That's right. Not the same block as Jenny, though.
Your block's like 25 k's away.
Was really good to her. You know what I mean? Not so much to me.
We have a lot of great stuff to go through in this episode. I guess banter. Banter is the one thing that you're going to get a lot of out of today. We usually try to bring a good amount of banter. Today we're going to add even more banter with Anna into the mix. We're going to kick off by talking about what's making news in the world of the podcast and business. Then we're going to share today's tactic. Ronsley is going to go through the Apple Podcast Creator tools to make sure you know how to promote, feature, and grow your podcast. We're going to dive into Anna Vocino's story. She's been able to do some amazing things. So we're going to really unearth the DNA on her success and figure out what things you can do to replicate that in your own business and podcast. And I'm going to share with you the big mistake for today that we didn't have time to get through in episode 5 because we had so much fun with our good friend Sandy. So the big mistake is having bad time management that makes your podcast a constant stream of deadlines. So if you feel like, hey, constantly feel like I've got that next podcast coming up or another piece of the process coming up, let's just get that sorted once and for all. That's one of the things that we're going to cover here in episode 6 of Podcasting for Business. Rons, what are you seeing making news these days?
Well, lots of things, but it doesn't seem really interesting to share them. So we thought that that we'd look at some statistics, because I thought what was really interesting with what's going on. In fact, I mean, I'm super keen to get Anna's thoughts on this, because Anna's been around when there were like maybe a few 100,000 podcasts on Apple, maybe even less. But I wanted to talk today about the stats, like how many podcasts are really around, like how many podcasts were getting published over the last few days or months, or like what's the stats. And we know for a fact in the podcasting game, for example, that over COVID, people started creating lots and lots of podcasts. So today, let's look at some stats. So if you go to like podcastindex.org, you get these stats. Yeah, right. I find that interesting and so super fascinating, because There was a time where there were like 200,000 podcasts when I got it, maybe 200-ish. So 4 million is insane. And
Wait. So these are individual titles, or these are episodes?
So these are these are episodes that have been published in the last 3 days. These are total podcasts that are there, like total podcast. So this figure here, which is 100,000, are the number of episodes that have been published in the last 3 days. And then in total, there are like 4 million podcast episodes. I find that interesting. Hey, what are your thoughts, Anna? What do you see?
That's a crap ton of people sitting around, and I feel like we were all in the wrong business. We should have been in the microphone selling business, because everybody bought a microphone from 2020 to 2022.
That's a big jump,
Those are my thoughts. We should all quit and invest in microphones.
Done.
Stop talking and start investing.
So here's another thing that I hear in the podcasting game with those numbers of 4 million podcasts in total, is that because Anchor started replicating and duplicating links, right? So there's a lot of like, I don't know whether you got the link, but I definitely got my podcast, another link from Anchor saying, hey, your podcast is on Anchor and here's a new link. And I'm like, no, this is not my link. And I had to try to find a way to get it off Anchor because they would duplicate links. So there's all these duplicate podcasts apparently out there that are kind of fudging the numbers, because if I just did a search, let's just do this live so that maybe I could be entirely wrong about this whole thing. But if I did podcast stats, I wonder what comes up. This is an article.
Hey, while you do that, I'm going to experiment with some tech.
Yeah.
Meaning, I'm going to try to switch mics for a second. So.
No, that's cool. I find it interesting that there are so many podcasts. I don't know whether that's actually the true number. I wonder, James, what do you thoughts about that? Are you too late in the game to like kind of think that 4 million is a lot of podcasts?
Yeah, I think people look at 4 million and be like, wow, like, so there's a story of two people who went to a new market, and these two salespeople, and they saw no one wearing shoes, and one salesman came home and said, no, it's not our market because no one wears shoes there. And the other salesman came back and said, it's the perfect market because no one wears shoes. So the exact same perspective. I think it's an unbelievably good opportunity to get into podcasting. I've said it time and time again on this show that you get an ROI if you manage your podcast the right way. You get an ROI on having that show before anyone even hears the episode. So if you haven't got a podcast yet, or you don't have the right plan for that, stay tuned to this Podcasting for Business show. Come on, we'd love to put you in the hot seat and learn about what you're doing so we can help diagnose maybe where you're going wrong, or give you some tools and steps that can help you really unleash that potential that you have with your podcast. It's a fantastic and I believe unparalleled way of being able to build trust with people. So when they're ready to buy the product or service that you have, or they're ready for that transformation that you specialize in, you're the name that they think about. Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, I had a conversation this morning, James, and you'd appreciate this. I had a conversation with a gentleman that had a podcast, or has a podcast, and has had it for like 175 episodes. Anna would probably love this too. That's
a pretty good amount of episodes.
That's a pretty good amount of episodes. And he kind of goes, when I first started the podcast, I just wanted to make an impact, and I wanted to give value. But I'm so tired right now because after 175 episodes, I don't really know what it's really doing for me. And I was like, man, I totally understand, because you're a business owner that's trying to become a podcaster. And there's a big difference. And Anna, I mean, you've been in the presentation game, like before podcasting, you were like radio presenter, like right, and you come from that space. I'm keen to hear from you. What are your thoughts on like those kind of mistakes that we make, because we're getting into the game thinking that we can, it's like people getting on Canva trying to do graphics design, right? It's like that. It's like because you can make a picture doesn't mean you're a graphics designer. Because you use social media doesn't make you a social media expert. But I mean, we kind of get into the game, which is great, but learning to be better. What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, can you hear the tap on the mic?
No.
Okay, so it did not work. My plan did not work.
It did not work. It's
Because
fine.
I'm hearing you guys through the Roadcaster, which, hey, podcasters out there, everybody has their Roadcaster. Well, we found the platform that doesn't want to accept it.
Well, we can hear you, so let's
Okay,
just.
good. Well, I switched back to this guy. So, you know, fatigue after 175 episodes, I completely get it. I know everyone's doing different things, and I think, gosh, not knowing this person's details, like, is there a finite amount of information to download, or is it something where the content is evergreen and you constantly have new inspiration? Because Vinny and I have been we're just past 2,100 episodes, and there's only so many ways that you can tell people to cut out processed foods and move their bodies. Like, we can interview experts when we do. We can interview success stories, and we do. And we're constantly ripping things from the headlines because, Lord, we're a diet-obsessed culture, and there's never any shortage of BS out there to cover. But getting fatigue after 175 episodes, I feel that when you're not growing something, I don't know, you have to look at, like, is this podcast just really fun, like me and my friends talking? Or does it need to be promoted from a different angle? Is it hitting the wrong audience? Is it not finding its audience? I mean, everything out there is so split. What's the word I'm looking for? It's like trifurcated. Like, you can't get your message out because of the algorithm. I call it the algorithmic cock blocking. Like, it's hard to get what you want out there. And so you have to kind of look at all the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, I was primarily referring to like business owners that start a podcast that forget that, you know, there's a presentation element involved. So if like, what are the things that as a presenter you would try to get into, like when you're first starting out? Like, focus on the audience is probably the main one, and they, you know, what kind of audience do you focus on and how do you engage them, I suppose?
I mean, focus on the audience, yes, for sure. But I think there's also a certain learning curve where you have to start to wire yourself to find content where you're listening to your customers, not just to address their needs, but also to go, hey, that's a great topic I can generalize and talk about on the podcast. Or if you have a customer who's a success story, who'd be willing to come on and talk about it. But I think when you're doing this for business, you need to know who your customer is, who your audience is. Sometimes they're not always the same people. So you just have to, you know, keep all of that in mind and constantly be mining your everyday interactions for ideas for content. And that will keep it fresher and keep you more on your toes. Because regurgitating and then not growing your audience is excruciating.
And creating, I was on a podcast today with a former Special Forces guy, a very accomplished individual, and we were talking about that rut. Like, my podcast is called Win the Day. His podcast, you know, the Special Forces mindset, he talks about all of those things. When you're in a position as a content creator where you have to create content around what you preach and what you believe in, but you feel like you're in that rut, like when you're not inspired. Like, being inspired is the #1 productivity hack in the world. When you're on the flip side of that and you've got to drag yourself to the microphone, that's when I feel like it's very, very tough. And then that's when you're consistency can completely wane. Of course, batching episodes and things like that is very valuable at that point. But for anyone who's starting out and they're like, well, I don't know what to even create, what content, what videos I should even create to put out there, you got to think about, what do you know that your target market doesn't know that would make their lives easier? And if you can always focus on that and be inspired about your role as a guide to help people, then I think that should help you get up when you have those bad days. And of course, recognizing that it's normal to have those bad days as a creative. I mean, it's tough to put content out there on a very regular basis. Yeah.
It's real, and just the burnout, and there are some days where you just want to like light a match behind you and just burn it all to the ground. That's normal to feel that way. I think normalize wanting to burn it all to the ground. Because once you do, you'll make peace with it, and you'll pick yourself back up, and you'll get inspired again. The inspiration will come back. And I once heard from somebody, if you're sitting on a 2-hour flight next to someone and you really hit it off with them, and you have to explain what it is that you want to explain in that 2-hour flight, how would you do it? And that's a method of writing a book, writing a bunch of blog posts, writing a bunch of whatever it is that you're doing that you want to distill to your audience. That if you sum it up in that way, you'll find a lot of things that you can chunk out into episodes, and that'll just the act of sitting and even like bubbling or brainstorming mind maps about it will help you come up with fresh stuff. That's honestly oftentimes how I write jokes too.
Interesting.
Use one of those Apple pencils with an iPad?
Fragments.
Yeah, have you got one of those Apple iPad pencil
and a
things?
pen.
Oh, yeah. Ron's has
I mean,
one of those.
I bought an Apple
pencils.
pencil,
So
and
cool.
then I don't ever use it, so it's a waste of money.
Can I have it? Let me put it up on Marketplace, and I'll be at your house tomorrow.
No, I want it. Are they sold out? Are they like a hot commodity or something? Do I have like the cool thing?
Yeah, you have the cool thing. The cool thing, like, I think for jokes and everything, I use rolls and paper, and I use, I love the feel of paper, but there's something about having it on the iPad that I can move my notes around. So I can move thoughts around. So if I write something and then I can move the thing and it doesn't fit in that spot, so I can move it around. So I can just, it's different. But I'm keen to know from you, Anna, I mean, that you mentioned this, because I feel like we can all learn a lot of things from, in parallel, and I want to learn from. I always found stand-up comedy like super interesting and super fascinating. When you're thinking about jokes and you're talking about these bubbles, how do you sort of put it together? Like, do you see an event and kind of go, "That's a funny event. I'm gonna put it into the three things and make sure that there's a setup, a thing, and a twist." And how do you put that together?
It evolves very organically, and I think that, for example, I had to roast a friend of mine for her birthday recently. My husband and I did. We were the hosts of the roast, and we had to write roast jokes. And roast jokes are a very particular subset of stand-up comedy, because you have to go there, you have to be biting, scathing, funny, clever, and very, very succinct in order for the jokes to land. And also, too, this roast we were doing had a lot of people who weren't comics and weren't roasters, so so we really had to set it up.
Yeah,
felt like the pressure was on. So, in thinking of your business like a person that you have to roast, we had to come up with different topics about this person that we know about her.
Yeah.
She's this kind of a person. She always does that. She's from Wisconsin. She's, you know what I mean? So if you just come up with topics for your business, the fragments will start to come. It'll happen very quickly when you sit down to write stuff. And by the way, I don't always write in the notebook. Sometimes I write in a Google Doc. My organization is horrendous. I have notebooks that look like a crazy person serial killer, weird, because it's like order more sauce and then like fragments of a joke.
Hey, we promoted this episode as organizer expert.
By Salt.
Yeah, We promoted this episode as organizer expert and a Vocino, so you're really living up to the hype here.
You guys are fucked.
And I have a question.
No, I mean,
for you.
I do move a tremendous amount of creative content down the road. I write recipes, I write books, I manufacture sauce and spices, and I have new flavors coming out. I have to do voiceover, I have to write jokes, things have to be fresh. We're pitching shows right now. You know what I mean? It's like, it's insane. So you do have to move stuff down the line.
We lost you. You muted yourself.
Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
Maybe. And
So
a
weird.
question for you, in terms of delivering on the mic, or even getting in the zone in terms of the preparation for that, is there any exercise that you have or a ritual that you go through to get in the right headspace so you can feel like you're in the zone when you're delivering?
If you're not nervous in some way, at least for a long time, you're probably getting too cocky or arrogant. That's my opinion. To get really personal, the moment I feel my nerves, I tell myself the following phrase: angels, help me do a good job. And I say it out loud. And for
Yeah.
whatever reason, that calms my nerves down. And I don't know if it entices the powers that be to. Crap. Here
Hey.
we go. I don't know what happened.
It's all right.
We love live streaming.
Yeah.
But I was saying that I don't know if it's, I'm coercing invisible forces, but I'm probably just calming myself down enough to focus, because doing stand-up, I don't know, you still could have that feeling like you're going to vomit right before you go on. It's very normal to feel that, and you want to do a good job. And before I go on stage, whenever there are people there, I always say, angels, just help me connect with this audience. I just want to connect with people. And that's something you could say on a podcast too. You just want to connect with the person on the other end of the mic.
I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, I've rock climbed in Greece, and I still have sweaty fingers listening to you say that before going up on stage. I wonder what it's like. You say that phrase, and the intention is really interesting. That you talk about connection. What would you do to connect? Like, what are the things that would, like, okay, you kind of go, I want to connect with the audience, but do you pick someone out? Do you kind of generally make eye contact? What are the doings in connection with the audience?
It all depends. There's always like a million different circumstances when you're in a comedy club. Some clubs, the lights are so bright you can't see anybody. So if I see the corner of a lady's hands in her lap, I'll talk to her and imagine what she looks like. Yeah, I like connecting on an individual level with people. And if they're not feeling you, I always will abandon material and just do crowd work and talk to people. Just win them over.
And when you say crowd,
Because it's not worth I have to say my jokes. They'll like me if they hear my jokes. And it's like they're not feeling you, so just connect with them. Now, I know that's very specific to being on stage in a comedy club, but, if you're speaking on stage at a conference or you're on a panel or, you want to be able to relate. I'm a huge fan of stopping the momentum and asking somebody a question and just connecting in that way.
what kind of crowd work do you find most interesting? Like, what is your go-to crowd work? Like, what do you say? Do you notice something about a person, or do you ask them a question about something, about where you want the show to go? Or is it just about where you're at in the city? What do you refer to when you kind of do crowd
Any
work?
of those things, and literally any of those things. Lately, for 3 years before pandemic, my husband and I were touring, doing a dual act about marriage, and we've written so much material that sometimes it's more fun for us to see couples in the audience, talk to them, see a gay couple in the audience, makes it, say like how it's different than us boring straights and all that stuff. Just talking to the people in the audience will always bring stuff up. Marriage and long-term relationships have a lot of universal themes. So if somebody brings something up about fighting, well, guess what? We have 20 minutes on fighting. We've invented fighting. Good Lord. Two Italians who've been married for 23 years. We know how to fight.
Before I ask my question, Anna, I want to go back to
people feel better. They're like, at least we're not them. And then we've connected with them.
Ronsley mentioned before rock climbing in Greece. I want to know if it was Greece the country or you were randomly climbing in Greece the substance, Ronsley.
Or are you talking about Grease the person? It could be any of the above.
Or Grease the musical.
Or Grease the musical, yeah.
Rock climbing in Greece the musical. This bit about connection is such a massive, massive piece. I interviewed Janine Shepherd on my podcast the other day. Her TED Talk's got more than 2 million views. An incredible woman. And she had said
That's badass.
She said being a great TED speaker is all about connecting with the audience. And her coach for her TED Talk was Hugh Jackman's drama coach, a guy, Dean Carey. And Dean Carey said to her, to Janine, before you go out, like when you walk out on stage, it's very similar to what you mentioned before, Anna. Before you even start talking, look at the audience and say silently to yourself, I see you, I honor you. And I'm like, that's just such a powerful way of just getting yourself in the right headspace to be able to deliver these things.
I agree. And I don't know where I came up with this angels phrase. I'm not even particularly religious or spiritual, to be honest. But I just felt like whatever it is, it focuses that energy to get in the zone. And again, it's about the audience. Yes, I want to share who I am and what I have to say, and I want to make people laugh, of course, but it's about the audience to an extent. And that's when, what's her name? Who plays Jeff Garland's wife? I love Susie Essman. She calls it the president of the audience. If there's some a-hole out there, like people won't laugh unless they're laughing. Like it's a really interesting thing to watch. But at the same time, you can relate this back to podcasts to go, you can connect and you can get feedback and you can get positive and negative criticism. But ultimately, you have to take it in and decide how you want to use that or not, or throw it out. And because you're the boss of your podcast, you're the boss of your stand-up act, you're the boss of your podcast.
And I think to your point of what you're saying is that engagement piece is super important, because what happens is that, I suppose as business owners, the only audience we've ever had before podcasting has been clients, right? It's been, oh yeah, I'm a business owner, I have clients, they kind of have a problem, they come to me and sort of I fix it. And that now with content creation and social media, and you have this audience that you have to entertain, and you have to get them engaged, and you have to get them to connect with you, and it's not one-sided anymore. And I think that's what we're trying to learn probably here. So I wonder, with your connection piece and staying on that, how do you do that when it comes to voiceovers differently? And how do you do that when it comes to obviously stand up differently, or when you put your content or your recipes out and you put your book together? Is there a difference in how you sort of connect with your audience?
Well, it sounds so trite, but it's true. You have to be authentically you. For example, I have a recipe blog, although I'm posting all my new recipes at Substack now. I don't write long recipe posts. You go to recipe blogs and it's like pop up, and then you scroll, life story, keyword, SEO, yada, yada, yada. I just am like, here's a recipe that's good. You can use salmon or chicken recipe. I just don't need to gild the lily. But I have since found out why food bloggers do this, and it's to make a living. because they can get on ad networks and they have SEO and their stuff pops up on the first page of Google for, Nashville hot chicken or whatever the recipe is. And it's super cool that they make their living that way. I chose to not do that route, so I have to sell books in order for that to happen. But so I have this cool day job of doing voiceover that really helps too. So all this to say, you have to figure out what's authentic to you, what works for you, and it's only going to happen when you start to put content out there. Then you're like, I don't like that. That made me cringe. I want to do this. Or I copied somebody on that. And I want my own thing. At the beginning of starting to put the recipes out there and get published, I remember Family Circle, which is a magazine or was a magazine here in the States for decades, geared towards middle America housewives. They wanted to work with me, but they didn't like that I had the word shit on the landing page of my main page. And I'm kind of like, well, Chef Ramsay has 4 billion television shows, and he says fuck every other word. And I always wonder, too, I'm like, is it because I'm a female? I'm not supposed to curse like a sailor? Like, what is it? That's a whole other conversation about weird, deep-seated misogyny. However, that's who I am. I'm going to curse sometimes. Unless you tell me not to. This is a clean show. I can do a clean show. By the way, you guys didn't warn me. I may have ruined it for you. I've already cussed
We were a clean show. No, kidding.
Well, awkward laugh. No. But so I thought, well, that's fine. I can take the word shit off the landing page of my website. It's not that big a deal. And then after I worked with them, I put it back on.
Yeah, throw it in the ingredient list.
They're no longer a magazine anymore. They went out of business, so screw them. No, but they were great. But I saw that happening about what was me and what was authentic. And at the time, you have to decide, like, is this worth me doing this project, working with this client, doing this thing? Yes, I will take shit off my website. Will it be worth it down the line? Maybe not.
Yeah, going to those recipe websites where you get to the bottom of the page, you're like, did I even see the recipe? Where the hell was it? I read everything else about your family history and the history of every other product in there and everything else. Yeah. Just the actual recipe.
They're doing it for SEO because, and they make between $20,000 and $40,000 a month. Those food bloggers have it dialed in, man.
Yeah, we've got a client who...
But are they connecting? Or are they just... Their target audience is the Google bots and the ad things. You know what I mean? So they have to write it to a certain extent for the housefrau who wants the, salted lime-rimmed skinny margarita recipe.
And also, like, if you're literally looking up the way to get found on Google and all that kind of stuff, then that's probably the way that, I think it's called programmatic marketing or something to that effect, is like when, anyway, it's way beyond my pay grade, isn't it, James?
It is. Why don't we get into our mistake for today? Because I would love to hear what Anna thinks about this as well. Now, Ronsley and I have
talking about mistakes.
Yeah.
Because I've made so many.
Haven't we all? And that's how we learn. Experience isn't the best teacher; it's the only teacher. Apart from, of course, the Podcasting for Business show coming at you twice a week, and you can get replays. Listen. Ronsley, you will fill me in on the URL.
you were on a roll there, man. It was so good. It was so good. Listen.shouldistartapodcast.com. Should I Start a Podcast is the podcast that I host. So any of the replays, all these replays are sort of edited down, and you can find them on the show. Actually, today we had a new episode that went out with Anna's voice all over it, and your voice, obviously, James. We were talking about how to partner with your podcast. When you have a business, how to joint venture and how to partner with your podcast. And it's really, really cool episode. So go check that out. But yeah, back to you, James.
Yeah, Rons and I have put together these 70 mistakes after working with business owners all over the world. These are the 70 mistakes that you need to be aware of so you can stop making them. There's even a big 10 list. We've put together the big 10 biggest mistakes that you're making if you're a business owner with your podcast. So you can go and download that at mistakes.wearepodcast.com, or just drop a comment and we'll make sure the team sends that out to you. Mistake number 55 is what we're going to talk about today, and that's having bad time management that makes having a podcast a constant stream of deadlines. And now maybe this is just something that everyone has to go through unless you have the right help from day one. I didn't have the right help. It sounds like Anna didn't have the right help. Ronsley probably didn't have it may not have existed when Ronsley and Anna, the two OGs of podcasting, were getting into the game. But examples of bad time management will be things like reinventing the wheel every single episode. It'll be things like failing to batch produce episodes, not having a process that can help you produce better episodes faster. What's your process? Not having a bank of questions that you can resort to at short notice to make sure that you're extracting amazing answers from your guests, but also strengthening that conversation. Not being aware of what the call to action or call to engagement is going to be for your show. Or, and this is a really important one, this came up in one of the client sessions that we ran the other day, that mentality of I'll just do it. We know it's something that can be outsourced, but we're so protective over the finished product or our role in the creative process, or that we think that no one else is going to be able to do it as good as us, that we say to ourselves, I'll just do it. It's like the Nike slogan, except you've butchered it and added yourself in there, which is not what we want to do when we want to scale a business using a podcast. Ronsley, Anna, I would love to hear what you both think about this mistake, having bad time management. And I've got a bunch of other things that we can dive into after.
Yeah, I'll let Anna go first because I think she might be.
Yeah. Wow. I have a lot of thoughts. And also, I love that you've collected all these mistakes. I want that document. I want to look at it and go, oh, what am I doing? Because I'm sure I'm making a lot of them. Okay. Bad time management is not just about bad time management. It also bleeds into your entire life. And if you have a family, if you're trying to raise kids, if you're trying to have a relationship, if you're trying to have a life, bad time management will ruin all those things in one way or another, but it will be to your detriment. It might even ruin your health because you could screw your cortisol up, get fatigued, and you go to bed every night freaking out that you didn't get the things done that you were supposed to get done, which, by the way, if you go to bed, when you go to bed, because we all go to bed, when you go to bed, if you ever sleep, we never sleep. No, when you go to bed and your head hits the pillow, make peace with the fact that you didn't get those things done. It's okay. Those things weren't meant to get done that day. So just relax, literally. You need to for your health. And I say this now as somebody who just turned 49, and I'm finally, the chickens are coming home to roost of the bad sleep behavior that I've exhibited for 20 years. My body's like, bitch, you crazy. Like, you cannot think that we're going to support you in this.
Was it an episode of Seinfeld where they were talking about how the nighttime version of you is like, stay awake, keep having fun, whereas the morning you is like, come on, please just go to bed early for once in your life?
Yeah.
Every morning we're like, you know what? I'm not going to have any dairy today. I'm going to go to bed at 9. I'm not going to have any alcohol. And then you do all the things. Yeah. So time management is also, too, about, I like Gary Keller's book about the one thing. You pick the one thing to move things forward. I will say, as somebody who moves multiple projects forward simultaneously, you have to pick the one thing within each project. And it might only be that you get 3 things done that week.
Yep.
But also, too, there's an idea of timing. I want to say universal timing. I don't know who's responsible for the timing, but everybody knows this feeling of, oh crap, I didn't get that thing done, and I should have turned in the application, or blah blah blah, or launched the podcast on the day I should have launched it, and then it turns out you launch it 6 weeks later, and then you go, oh good, I'm glad I didn't do it then because of XYZ. Yeah. Usually there's a reason for stuff, and we don't know what it is. We're not smart enough to see the entire world view of it until you have already done it. So those are some thoughts.
I think that's really interesting when you're talking about the time management. I think it also comes down to like for me, when you're saying bad time management, one of the things that we do often is we have a time slot, I suppose, and then in that time slot we don't know what to do with that time slot, right? We're like, I know I have to work for an hour, but what do I do in that hour? So I land up checking email, or land up doing some social media stuff, or I don't know, look up some trainings on YouTube. Maybe I don't know, but at the end of the hour, it's like I've been working, but not necessarily working productively. So I think that in terms of having bad time management, one of the things that I do, and I do often, is have a list of things that I meant to do, and in what order as well. It helps to sort of sort them out, and just having 3 things that I want to get done in the day, for example, on a post-it note, helps me sort that out. So is that what you're talking about, James? Is that what you're after?
Yeah. Absolutely. I also write that down every single morning. I write down what are 3 things that are going to make today a win. Every single day I do that, even on the weekends, even if it's something like breathe and relax. That will be number 3 if I've got a lot of stress going on, or a lot of things that are, big events that are happening. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention here, I just want to take you in just to give you a little bit of a snippet of how I've been able to evolve my podcast to make it a lot more efficient, because the whole aim of what we're trying to do here is give you a better quality podcast in faster time in terms of preparation and production and putting the whole thing together. If every single week or every single episode you can have a slightly better quality podcast and overall experience for the listener, and be faster at putting that together, then you're going to be working like a well-oiled machine over time. The thing that works really well for me is doing everything in Google Drive. Anna had mentioned that earlier. And so I have one folder that's a template folder that gets duplicated. And as part of that, there's going to be one folder called audio and video. The moment the files are finished recording, they instantly get backed up there, because it's just a secondary cloud backup service to make sure those files don't get lost. I've never lost a recording, thankfully. That would be a horrible feeling. And that way, the audio and the video, I have someone who does the audio, someone who does the video, they can go and access those.
That means you've
files.
never lived, really, if you've never lost a podcast recording. Hey, Anna, that means if you've never lost a podcast recording, means you're just way too organized. And yeah, it's...
I did one today. Maybe that one will get mysteriously lost. Sorry, Wes. I'm going to mysteriously lose the recording from today.
Or you're just searching emails for different search strings. Like, if I just find that one thing, then I can look on the computer, and then it never comes together. And then you have to rebuild your mailbox. It's a whole thing. Yes, we're all
brutal.
We're all disorganized and organized at the same time. But yeah, if you're going to put out repeated content, you have to have a workflow. You have to be organized. You have to stay on top of it. And now that I've committed to doing a Substack every Thursday, Wednesday night can come up pretty quick.
So just for context, while we're here, what are your commitments, Anna? What kind of content do you put out regularly? Like, I know the show.
Vinny and I. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go. You on the right track.
Okay.
Yep.
So Vinny and I do a Fitness Confidential show. We do the Monday show. That's kind of our flagship show. He does 5 shows a week, but I do the Monday show. Sometimes I'll jump on a Friday show. So we do the Monday show, and we record that on Thursday. I have scheduled weekly voiceover sessions, plus my agents have my calendars, so they will schedule things, in there. And in between, I write a new Substack every week, which has a new recipe. I promise to put all my recipes there unless they're in a book. And then I just signed a book deal, which I've self-published before, and now I have a traditionally published book deal, and the deadline looms horrifyingly close, even though it's January. I haven't started, and I'm freaking out. I'm already putting pressure on myself. When you self-publish, you do it all on your own timeline. So if something gets delayed, but now I'm on someone else's time. So
for sure. And
I have got to fit all that in. I've got to email grocery stores and get into grocery stores. I've got to deal. I don't do my own fulfillment, but my business partners do fulfillment. And so I'm just running a bunch of businesses.
Yeah, you need that process of being able to have all that stuff. Yeah, just living the dream, Anna. And to give people an insight of the content that I have out there on a regular basis. So I'll have a podcast audio that'll be about 45 minutes, 50 minutes thereabouts. That will also be a 14,000 word blog post. It'll go up on my website. That will be a video that goes up on YouTube. That's every Tuesday. Then every Wednesday, I have the LinkedIn newsletter, which is repurposed podcast content for generally, which is also thousands of words. Social media content, all of these different things are going out every single week. Now, if that's a business, imagine a competing business trying to compete with that from an SEO perspective, an awareness, engagement perspective. You're just not going to be able to do that. So to give you a little bit of a bird's eye view of that Google Drive system that I have, it's the audio and video folder. There's a transcript folder. I'll go into that in more detail shortly because that's the most important one. Images, bio, and then the episode artwork folder. So that the transcript one, that's where once the podcast is recorded, the audio goes to Rev to be transcribed, and that goes in there. But I've got one Google Doc template file. That includes things like the episode title, intro, what's in it for me being the user, so the person who's listening to the podcast, what are the 4 things that they're going to take away from this episode? And I introduce those things every single episode before I even introduce the guest. So they're bullet point templates ready to go. Recording reminders. What do I need to know if I'm recording the interview remotely to make sure I don't stuff it up? They have my standard rocket round questions, which I do at the end of the episode. I have a template ending where I can just add in the person's name and products of theirs or their social media handles. What call to action and what call to engagement am I going to use for this episode? I have a standard outro because quite frankly, it just became a bit of a pain in the ass to record a new outro for every episode. And I also have a template, resources, and links section. That's all in this one Google Doc. So I'm not staring at a blank screen. And I feel like if you're creating something, staring at the blank screen or the blank canvas is the most difficult thing to do. All I'm doing is just filling in the dots. Bang, 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 bang. You can do that very, very quickly. Good. Oh, the images folder. Yeah, I'm asking the guest, what images can you send through? I don't want to have to go to Google and find out all of those high-res images. And then the bio. I was once a guest on someone's show. They asked me about all this stuff about chemistry and all these things. It's because they didn't have the right bio because they went and Googled it rather than asking me. Chemistry was my worst subject in school by a long way. I don't know anything about chemistry.
They had a different James Whittaker.
Yeah, they did. Yes, he actually did. So it was funny because the interview started with my journey. Then it randomly added in chemistry, which lost the chemistry
You're
between
like,
us.
chemistry,
Ironically,
how dare you?
It's all your worst It's all your worst nightmares coming back to haunt you in one amazing experience, James. This is like
where you go to take the exam and you never took the class.
People do ayahuasca for
James was living.
People do ayahuasca for this kind of trauma healing, dude. Like
they do. I mean, if it was coffee or anything else, even modern history, I feel like I would have had a better run at than freaking chemistry. So we went into the depths of chemistry. I couldn't even bluff my way through 5 seconds of that. I was like, I don't know anything about chemistry. I think you must be talking about someone else. So when you have the bio of that person and all of those different images, and then you can get the artwork created for that episode, which will then be a YouTube thumbnail, Instagram story resolution, as well as a square one episode artwork at about 500 KB that will then get uploaded to the podcast host platform. They're all there in the Google Doc that the whole team can go and do what they need to do. It's a very, very efficient process, but I am constantly refining it. Every episode, I'm like, what can I do to improve the finished product to make this faster and make it better quality? So if I could really sum those up, and you can go and replay this or listen to the replay on Should I Start a Podcast? If I could sum that up or give a few tips, it would be batch record. I used to think that having like a month in the bank was great. Having 3 months in the bank is the runway that I'm really after now, if not more. Outsource so you can focus on growing your business. Don't be afraid to outsource. If you're saying to yourself, I'll just do it, that is a bad sign if your intention is to eventually scale your business. And then finally, just to reiterate this, constantly revise your process so you can improve the quality over time at a faster rate. Now I'm going to go and read
That's
Chemistry
so
for
good.
Dummies. Order it off Amazon.
Ions. That's all I know. I just know the word ions. Don't even know what it means. Don't even
Teach me, Anna, teach
negative
me.
electrons. I don't know. You know what? But what you said really resonated because it's implementing systems and then working those systems, because you can't create content. And what you said too about having the social templates ready to go. Like, I have somebody I've hired that I sent the moment that new recipe's done. I have my photographs. By the way, I take my own all my own food photography. So I got to get the recipe, the whole thing, all the assets ready to go. And she takes it and makes it wondrous for every platform, because of course, different file resolutions and sizes per platform, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a lot. And if you do that all yourself, you will burn out.
So while we're winding this show up and landing this plane, I want to ask you, Anna.
We're never ending it. What I went through to get this mic to work,
Mic to work, mic to not
and
work.
I'm still not entirely sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was like, mic to not work is more appropriate.
To get this mic to not work. Thank you. Clarity.
And I want to ask you this question because I think we probably don't get a chance to reflect. When you think back on the last 49 years and you think that now you're a published author of 2 books, amazing books, third one coming out, you've done stand-up comedy tours, you've been on NBC, you've done all these things. How do you feel?
Sometimes I feel tired. And then other times I feel pressure because I've only gotten done 0.02% of what I've set out to do on this earth. And then other times I just want to watch Bravo and watch Housewives fight.
Are you talking about?
Is that normal?
Are you talking about Johnny Bravo? Because I love Johnny Bravo.
Oh,
No, I'm
here
joking.
in the States, well, you guys have Real Housewives of Melbourne, which
Do we?
is, by the
Do
way,
we?
the best franchise of all the Housewives. Yeah.
I didn't know
Best, what is it? Housewives of Melbourne.
that. Best
Real
housewife?
Housewives of Melbourne.
Real
Oh
Housewives
my
of
God.
Melbourne.
The Real Housewives of Melbourne.
What do they do?
And they
Like,
all like, oh, all right, darling. Yeah. By a bit of art. They have a really strong, like major accent in Melbourne. Like, it's different. I know you guys know this, but as an American who loves accents, I was like, damn, these ladies, they turn it up.
yeah, proper.
They are emphatic.
They're
Huh?
proper Australian.
Fancy.
They don't
Yeah,
sound
get
very
fancy in
proper.
Melbourne.
They sound like improper women who happen to have money.
Oh,
my
that kind of
American
show.
hair.
I see. That kind of show. It's like a reality.
It's a
sort of-
nouveau riche. It's nouveau riche women. They fight. They get drunk. They, cat fight. It's wonderful.
Oh, they live the life,
Just-
living the dream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm extremely privileged to know you, and by the way, you were episode 13 of Bon Appetit, if I'm correct, or 21, I think.
right.
So it was like one of the first episodes that I recorded way back 8 or 9 years ago. So thank you for indulging me in all my experiments way back
Oh my God.
for the last 8 or
And
9.
look at what came out of it.
Right, and then Clubhouse for a year.
Yep. Are you going to go back to Clubhouse? What do we think about Clubhouse?
I feel like
That's
the people.
that's a consternated face.
Yeah, I'm a bit upset about Clubhouse because I feel like the people that were on Clubhouse are not on Clubhouse anymore, and I feel like going on Clubhouse feels a bit like haunted hallways sort of thing.
I feel that.
Yeah.
That's another weekly deliverable that I do. I have a Monday check-in, and I always say it's going to be an hour. And you, Rons, you are so great about landing the plane right at the top of the hour. I am not great at that because people are pouring their hearts out with their check-ins and their weight loss, and I don't want to be like, okay, great, we're done, Scott. Thank you so much. Sorry you're having a hard time. We have to go because I just don't feel like doing this for 5 more minutes. No, I love doing it, but it is like it takes all of my focus because I care about people
Yeah, it is draining for sure.
and I don't want to be an asshole.
Yeah, because you're listening.
Despite this interview.
No.
Despite
This
what you may have learned about me.
it's live, so you can't even hide this kind of shit. Like you can't even edit it out and say Anna's actually a really nice person and she's always
Anna
prepared.
actually does care. But it is when you're somebody who's supporting, in a way, I'm supporting tens of thousands of people, and I want to be a touch point for people, and that's something I've learned is that I have to have boundaries, and I can't be that to everybody.
Yeah.
I want to reach through the computer and help everybody because I know the struggles of weight loss and all that stuff, and people I'm doing this, but my spouse doesn't support me, or I lost the weight and my husband broke up with me. Like weird stuff that happens, and then my heart just goes out to people. Part of what makes me a good artist is that, but I also have to protect myself, and I've kind of learned that more recently because I've not been so good at it. But Clubhouse I love doing because we have this specific targeted group that checks in, but if I pop into other rooms or anything like that, it feels like haunted hallways. You're correct.
Yeah, I love Clubhouse. I just feel like the audio platform, it was really, really fun. But yeah, it's just, it's definitely the energy shifted in there. And that's what we're trying to really reinstate here. Like if you're watching this or listening to this could be on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. This is going everywhere. And we just want to make sure that people, if you're a business owner, come and join us. We want to hear your story about your business journey or about your podcast journey. We want to help you as much as we can. Make sure you go and connect with Anna Vocino. She's an amazing woman doing some very, very cool things. We will be back next week for episode 7 of Podcasting for Business. We'll drop a link into the comments where you can go and add that to your calendar. And if you want a copy of our 70 mistakes, which includes the 10 biggest mistakes and how to fix them, go to mistakes.wearepodcast.com. Great to see you all, and we will see you very soon on the next episode of Podcasting for Business.
See you, team.